Greetings everyone, my name is Bill. I'd like to welcome you to the S16 train riverboat. Today we're going to go on a little virtual tour of one of our locomotives, number 3025. I'm going to tell you about the different parts of the locomotive, tell you a little bit about how the locomotive works, and overall, have a good little tour. So, engine number 3025 is right in front of me here. This is her. Engine number 3025 was built in 1989 at the Tangshan Locomotive Works in China. She was built as part of an order of 7 locomotives for the American tourism market. She was originally owned by the Knox and Cane Railroad of Pennsylvania, until that company went out of business, at which point she was purchased at auction by the Valley Railroad, which operates the S16 train. She was restored to full working order in the year 2011 and entered revenue service then. Alright, so our tour begins right about now. The very front of the locomotive you see right here, this is called the pilot. The job of the pilot is to guide the locomotive along the track as it moves forward. You can see it's got the classic cow catcher, which is located directly underneath the coupler. We have our cutting lever, which uses to open and close the coupler. We have 2 pilot wheels. These are called, as I said, they're called the pilot wheels. They guide the locomotive along the track. And there's one on each side for 2. That tank underneath the smoke box there is an air reservoir. These the cylinders, which contain the pistons. Behind the pistons are the driving wheels and the rods, which are used to turn the wheels. Going back to the front of the locomotive. Up here, that's the headlight, along with the number plate. Behind the headlight is the smoke box. And above the smoke box is the stack. Moving along the side of the locomotive here, got the number plate, SY1658, Tangshan Locomotive Works, July 1989. This locomotive was built. Now here we have the driving wheels. There are 8 of them, 4 on each side. Big heavy driving wheels. Also have a piston rod. This rod connects to the driving wheels. Then they push the wheels forward and the steam comes down into the pipe. We'll cover more on that later. Here is the air compressor. Air compressor creates compressed air, which is then used to deliver the pneumatic systems of the engine, such as the firebox door, which I'll show momentarily, as well as the blower, which is used to provide air into the firebox. So down here we have also you can see the brakes, brake shoes. Now steam trains use air brakes, which are driven by the air compressor. The compressor, as well as has to provide air to the brakes, is if there is no air to the brakes will apply. We have to apply air pressure to the brake system to get the brakes off so that the train will move. Here we have the underside of the firebox. These are air dampers, which can be opened to allow air inside. Below the firebox, you can see that just inside there, that's the ash hopper. I'll get out my flashlight so we can have a better look. There we go. Now the inside of the ash hopper is where all the ash from the firebox falls into. Just above the hopper is the firebox itself, which I'm going to take a step back here momentarily to give you a look at the firebox. It's this whole area. Just above the firebox is the boiler. The boiler runs the whole length of the locomotive. And inside the boiler are tubes through which gases flow, which gases from the firebox, from where the fire is. And surrounding the tubes is water for creating steam. The steam gathers at the top of the boiler, where it goes to the steam dome, which is that large dome closest to us. So you see a little red valve right next to it. That's the steam dome. Alright, so moving back here. You can see these water hoses. They run from the tender, which is right behind us here, that's the tender, up to the boiler. Those are used to provide water to the boiler, driven by a device called an injector. An injector uses steam pressure from the boiler to dump water from the tender into the boiler directly. Actually, down here, this pipe, any excess water from the injector dumps out here. Also the big heavy chains that connect the tender to the locomotive itself. Back here we have the trailing wheels. The trailing wheels allow the locomotive to be guided along the track just as it's going in reverse, and it also supports the weight of the firebox. So we're going to climb up into the cab here. I'm climbing up on the fireman's side. I'll show you why it's called the fireman's side in a moment. Alright, we are in the cab. This here is the fireman's seat. We call these seat boxes. So if I sit down on the fireman's seat here, there we go. There's a view of our locomotive. We can see here, we can see the running board. We can also see this red valve here. This controls the flow of water to the injector. By turning it clockwise, I can restrict it, or by turning it counterclockwise, I can increase it. This is the lever for the injector. So when I open the injector, first it's a clicking noise created by water entering the system. Then I would pull it all the way open to allow water to start pouring into the boiler. This down here, this is the blow down control. In the boiler, mud and other impurities from the boiler water collect inside an area called the mud ring. So I can clean out that area of the boiler by opening the blow down. All right. This is the blower. The blower allows air, particularly air from the compressor, to be blown into the firebox to create a draft over the fire. I can increase it by turning the valve clockwise, or decrease it, turning the valve clockwise, or increase it, turning it counterclockwise. And here, very critical, get my flashlight out so you can see it a little better. This is one of two water glasses. These display the level of water inside the boiler. At all times you want to be cognizant of where your water level is. So if your water level is too low, that can cause the top of the crown sheet, which is the top of the firebox, to overheat, melt, and cause a boiler explosion. If your water level is too high, then it can dump over from the boiler into the pistons, creating a water hammer inside the pistons, and that's hell on the equipment. So you want to be conscious of your water level at all times. That's the most important thing to be mindful of when you're operating a steam locomotive, is your water level. Down here, we have the firebox door. This is called a butterfly door. Now right down here, there's a pedal that I can step on, and that would force the door open. That is driven by, once again, by the pneumatic systems in the engine. Otherwise, I have this red lever here that I can use to open and close the firebox door by hand. So if you look inside the firebox, you can see these grates. Now these grates move, and that's on top of what the coal bed rests. Now I can shake the coal off the grates by shaking them using a bar, which I can show you momentarily. On top of the firebox, there's an arch made of bricks. Now the bricks allow the fire the heat and gases inside the firebox to stay there longer. So the the heat from the fire has to work its way around the brick arch and then up into the tubes, which are really tough to see from here. Don't know if you even can. But the tubes are there, trust me. Then the heat from the fire will move from there into the tubes and heat the water in the boiler to create steam. This is the steam pressure gauge. This shows me the pressure level in the boiler, measured in PSI. So optimally, with this locomotive, I want to have a pressure of about 180 PSI, or thereabouts. If I have too high a pressure, the safety valve at the top of the boiler will lift, venting off excess steam pressure, causing the pressure to drop again. Now I can also drop the pressure by adding water to the boiler with the injector. And I can make the pressure go up by heating the fire. So I'm going to sit down here in the engineer's seat rather. The controls I have in front of me are the train brake, which is the larger of the two, the locomotive brake. Down here, this is the bell ringer. If I open that, the pneumatic systems will automatically ring the bell. Above me, this cord is for the whistle. That's the whistle cord. This black lever is the headlight control. I can turn the headlight on by pushing it forward. That'll turn on the front headlight, or I can pull it back and turn on the rear headlight, which is on the tender. What else we got here? We have our air pressure gauges for the brakes. We also have the throttle. That's this long lever here. Right now the throttle is completely open. I can close the throttle by grabbing the lever and pulling it back towards me. The throttle allows the certain amount of steam to enter the cylinders and push the pistons by moving the locomotive at a faster rate or a slower rate. And that throttle is actually connected to the steam dome. I can see this pipe that runs the length of the locomotive to the steam dome. And here is the reverser, this tall lever here. This is my gear shift, as close as we can think of it. Now when I've got the reverser all the way forward, I've shifted the locomotive into forward gear. But as we gain speed, I move the reverser back to the middle. Same thing if I'm going in reverse. I also have another control over here. I also have another injector on this side. This is the engineer's injector. This is the injector level control. So let's have a look here at the tender that's behind us. Here we have two scoops, a fireman's #1 tool for moving coal into the firebox. Right now there is no coal in the tender right now. This big area here is where all the coal is held. Just a big empty space right now. What we got here? And these telltales actually indicate the level of water inside the tender. So I could open one, and if water would come out, then the water level in the tender has reached that height. And this is my rake. I can use the rake to rake out the bed of coal inside the fire. Get all the impurities to fall down into the grates. This hook up here does a similar job. I can use that to break up chunks of coal that have turned into a clinker inside the firebox. Get my fire bed nice and neat. Up here, This is the bell cord. By pulling on that, I am sounding the locomotive's secondary signaling device, the bell. Here we also have a second water glass. And this here, that's actually a light. Same on the other side for the firemen. I also have my controls up here. This is for the injector. Generator flow. This is the main turret valve. Without that open, I can't allow steam to travel into the pistons from the steam dome. So my control for the blower to open and close it, and my air compressor control. This is also for the injector, though in my experience I have not actually used that particular valve. Or maybe I have. It's been a while. I haven't fired this locomotive in well over a year, so please bear with me. Alright folks, thanks for coming along for our little tour. My name is Bill. I hope you learned something today, a little bit about how steam locomotives work. And please, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.